Hello, you are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Ockham. Yes, today's meeting, it marks one of the power behind the voice sections. And my friends, by popular request, I've decided to take you through some histological identification of some organs. Now, this is going to be the first part. Yes, this section is going to be a rapid one for the reason that already I've done extensive video regarding some of these things. Now, going forward, intermittently, I'll be bringing in some of these histological identification of some of these organs for you. So that, of course, quickly you can revise, okay, some of these things, okay, for whichever upcoming exam that you have. And so, without wasting my time, let's set the ball rolling, looking at what we have for you today. Now, my friends, the first guy I have over here is actually the histological section of the lip. Now, don't forget that we have upper lip and, of course, the lower lip. Whichever lip we are talking about, the point is that it will present with three surfaces. That's the key thing I want you to know. First of all, it will present with an outer skin surface. And I want to show you that one over here. Now, whenever I talk about this outer skin surface, we are talking about thin skin and not thick skin. So that's the first thing I want you to know. Now, the reason why I'm emphasizing that it is thin skin is that, for instance, you are going to see thick skin in, of course, the palm of the hand and, of course, in the soles of the feet. Okay, so one thing I want you to know is that we are talking about thin skin, and the point is that thin skin will be, of course, endowed with hair. Okay, so one thing that we'll be seeing for sure, as far as the skin surface or the external surface of the lip is concerned, is that you'll be seeing hair follicles when you take that section. That's the first thing. Okay, and then of course the sebaceous glands will be seen. Of course, you'll be seeing, associated with the hair follicle, we'll be seeing the erector pili, muscles as well. Of course, you'll be seeing, of course, the sweat glands also. So now let's look at this portion. So my friends, this portion that we have over here is actually the external skin surface of the lip, for the reason that the epithelial lining is going to be what? Stratified squamous, keratinized. That's the point I want you to become aware of. Because we know that skin is made up of course, epidermis, and epidermis is essentially, stratified squamous, keratinized epithelium. Okay, because it's exposed to external environment, then we need the keratin to be an additional protective, mechanism over there. So that's what we call the stratified squamous, keratinized epithelium. Although we don't see the keratin so well, there's the artistic viewpoint. Okay, we are supposed to see a layer of keratin over here. But regardless, what we are going to see is that we'll be seeing these guys that we find over here, showing you this for the longitudinal sections, and these guys are the transverse sections. Yes, I've done videos on the skin. Okay, you can get these videos, and what does a rapid section for you. Okay, so one thing we will see is that these are what we call the hair, follicles, sections of the hair follicle in either transverse section or what we call, or longitudinal section. And my friends, one thing that we are aware is that associated with, of course, the hair follicles, so that upon contraction, okay, will cause the hair shaft, okay, to stand erect, okay, almost 90 degrees with the surface of the skin. Is, my friends, we are talking about the erector pili muscle, which is exclusively made up of smooth muscle fibers. So, my friend, these are the guys I'm talking about. Okay, this guy, for instance, this one, for instance, these are what we call the erector pili muscles. Okay, the smooth muscles associated with the hair follicles. Is that all? No? As far as skin is concerned, one other thing too that we often see, which is associated with the hair follicles, is that we'll be seeing something called sebaceous glands. And one thing we know about sebaceous glands is that they are simple branched alveolar glands, which may be associated with hair follicles, or sometimes they may open independently, okay, and they may not open into a hair follicle. So that's the things I'm talking about over here. So these guys you see over here, okay, this one is not opening into any hair follicle, okay, simple branched alveolar gland over here, and this one is opening into a hair follicle. This is a sebaceous gland. Of course, we know the mechanism of secretion being holocrine, okay, in nature, sacrificing the entire secretory apparatus. Okay, so these are some other examples of what we call the sebaceous glands. Now, the other thing that we are going to see also is that we will be seeing sweat glands. So one thing we know about sweat glands is that sweat glands are, simple, called tubular glands. Okay, that was one thing that we'll be seeing. And so these are the guys I'm talking about. These are, the sweat glands showing the duct, and of course the excretory unit may be, broken up into pieces. Okay, as you find over here. So these are what we call the sweat glands. Okay, so that's the first thing I want you to become aware of. Of course, we know that the sweat glands, it could be, merocrine, or it could be apocrine. I've done extensive videos on these things. Okay, as far as the histology of the skin is concerned, you can get the video link in histology of body systems to watch these videos. Okay, for further, comprehension. Now, moving away from that. Now, one thing I want you to know is that these guys, they are what we call the appendages of the skin. Okay, hair follicles, sebaceous glands, okay, sweat glands, they are appendages of the skin, which are derived from, of course, the epidermis. However, they find themselves in the dermis of the skin, as I told you. There's the cutaneous portion of the lip. Okay, so that one thing that I want you to know is that they are located in the dermis. And the dermis, we are going to have the reticular layer and, of course, the papillary layer of the dermis. We are not going into that detail. That's one thing I want you to become aware of. That's what we find. Now, if I go to the opposite aspect, okay, now pay attention. If I go to the opposite aspect, so there's the external skin surface. The opposite aspect is over here. That is the inner oral surface. So the internal surface of the lip, this time around, will not be, of course, cutaneous, membrane, but rather it will be mucous membrane. So the epithelial lining over here is not going to bear any sort of skin product. No appendage of the skin will be there. But my friends, this time around, although it's also very important for protection, that is why the epithelial lining over here will be stratified, squamous, non-keratinized, okay, opposite to the one we find over here, which is keratinized. This guy over here is stratified squamous, non-keratinized epithelium. Now, please pay attention. The key point I want you to know over here is that I've explained this times without number, that for you to identify that the epithelial lining is stratified squamous, whether keratinized or non-keratinized, is the presence of the epithelial pegs or epithelial ridges, such that the epithelium, okay, doesn't confine itself to a territory. It moves away into, of course, the connective tissue, lamina propria, deep to it. And likewise, the lamina propria also invades it, and that's something we call connective papillae. We'll be appreciating it better as we move along these things. Okay, so that's the first thing I want you to know. The epithelial line is stratified squamous, non-keratinized epithelium. And deep to it, my friends, is what we call the lamina propria. Lamina propria. So this is the one I'm talking about here, lamina propria. And one thing we know about lamina propria is made up of loose connective tissue areola. Okay, that is what we find over here. My friends, the key thing is that you will often see that if you touch the inner oral surface of your lip, that place is always, wet. Okay, that's one thing we see. It's always wet. So it means that there should be some glands which will make some product, okay, to ensure that this place is always moistened. And my friends, usually we want to see the glands dwell in the lamina propria, but my friends, this time around, we don't see the glands dwell in the lamina propria. Yes, in the lamina propria, you will see lymphatic vessels, you'll be seeing blood vessels, nerves, and what have you. They will be present. But my friends, there will not be any secretory acini as far as glands, okay, is concerned. Okay, so that's one thing I want you to know. Then, my friends, where are the glands going to be? And that is one thing I want you to know, is that deep to what we call the lamina propria, there's another connective tissue over here. And my friend, this time around, it is not loose connective tissue areola. This one, it is dense, irregular connective tissue, well endowed with, of course, secretory acini. And some of them are pale stained, okay, and they are the mucous secretory acini. And of course, we have the deeply stained ones, which are the serous acini. That's one thing I want you to know. Okay, and so this time around, we find the glands in, of course, something we call submucosa. Submucosa. Now, please bear in mind that there's no thin line separating this lamina propria from, of course, the, what do you call it? The submucosa over here. There's no thin line over there. The only distinguishing, identifying feature that you're going to see is the presence of the glands in, of course, this, submucosa. Now, because we are talking about the lip, these kind of glands, they secrete saliva continuously, ensuring that the oral cavity, yes, is always, wet or moist. So, my friends, we call them minor salivary glands. Minor salivary glands. And precisely because I associated with the lip, then we'll be calling it the, of course, labial glands. Labial glands. Please, I want you to appreciate that. Now, the other part that I'll be coming to, okay, is an intermediate region. Now, before I move from the external skin surface to the inner oral surface, there's going to be a transitional zone over here. And my friend, that is something we call the vermilion zone. Vermilion zone. Something we may also call a red zone. Okay, oftentimes one thing that is said about it, the reason why it's, reddish, is that we say that it is highly vascularized. And my friends, I will tell you that that is not entirely correct. Yes, wherever we have lamina propria, okay, there will be blood vessels over there. Okay, there will be capillary loops and all that. They will be there. Okay, but the key thing, the reason why it appears pinkish or reddish is that we have something called deeper connective tissue papillae. And I'm going to explain it to you in the next slide. So I'll be coming to this one. But my friends, right now, what I want you to do is that this intermediate region, okay, is that this place, the epithelial line over there, is stratified squamous, paracaratinized. But yes, it will also be keratinized. But my friends, it is devoid of what we call the cutaneous apparatus. By way of the hair follicles, by way of the sweat glands, neither is it going to have sebaceous glands. Likewise, it won't have these glands, okay, by way of the minor salivary glands, which ensure that the oral part of the lip is always wet. And that is why frequently you got to, for instance, use your lip for your tongue, for instance, okay, to moisten this area whenever you see that the area is getting, dried up. Okay, so that's one thing I want you to know. That over here, the key thing is that you have deeper connective tissue papillae, and let me explain that one to you. I'm going to explain that one to you. Now, the other important thing as far as this histological identification of the lip is concerned is that I want you to appreciate that we have what we call some kind of muscle. And my friend, this time around, you can look at the way I'm talking. I'm doing some kind of voluntary action. And so the muscle that we find over here is, my friend, skeletal muscle fibers. Skeletal muscle fibers. And my friends, this muscle fiber, okay, moves all around, okay, the lip in the circular fashion. And my friend, that is why we call this muscle orbicularis oris muscle. Orbicularis oris muscle. Okay, so that's one thing I want you to know over here. Of course, you shouldn't be surprised that you can see connective tissue running in between them. But of course, one thing I want you to know is that we don't have high infiltration of connective tissue in this muscularis that we find over here. And remember that it is exclusively made up of skeletal muscle fibers. Okay, so that's one thing I want you to know. And whenever I talk about skeletal muscle fibers, we are talking about some kind of fibers, cylindrical shape generally, okay, having peripherally placed multinucleation. Okay, that's one thing we see. Now, and so explaining this one further, okay, I have this slide to tell you something. Now look at this. Now pay attention here. I said that for you to know that the epithelial line is stratified squamous, whether it is keratinized, parakeratinized, or non-keratinized, one thing that we'll be seeing for sure, okay, is that we'll be seeing, okay, the epithelium dipping into the territory of the lamina propria connective tissue. And that is something we call epithelial peaks or epithelial ridges. Likewise, okay, the lamina propria also invades the territory of the epithelium, okay, and that is something we call connective tissue papillae, connective tissue papillae. And my friends, we know that connective tissue, unlike epithelial tissue, is well endowed with blood vessels. So we have some kind of capillary loops all around over here, so that nourishment, okay, will get to what we call the epithelial cells via diffusion, and their waste will also be carried away from them, okay, across the non-cellular basement membrane. Okay, so that's what we find over here. And so, my friends, one thing I always say in classroom is that by way of the epithelial peaks, okay, coming into the connective tissue territory, and connective tissue invading the territory of the epithelial lining, is based on the principle of Newton's third law of motion. Yes, that's the point. So that we say that actions and reactions are equal but opposite. So the point over here is that if we see that the epithelial peaks are very deep, then the connective tissue papillae will also go so deep onto the surface of the epithelial lining. And so the capillary loops will also get so close to the surface of the epithelial lining. And that is why the vermilion zone, that's one thing I want you to know, appears reddish or pinkish. Unlike the case of the cutaneous area, okay, by way of the external skin surface, and of course the inner oral surface. Very important for you to appreciate that. This also reminds me of something, that if you look at that of the cheek, okay, the histology section of the cheek closely resembles that of the lip, only that the cheek presents with two surfaces, an outer skin surface, which of course everything we said about the skin, okay, or the lip will be there, and then of course an inner oral surface, okay, which will also be, similar. The only thing is that we have some kind of ectopic structures which are found in the inner oral surface of what we call the cheek. And that is some kind of sebaceous glands which we find over there. Normally we want to see sebaceous glands right with the skin. But we find sebaceous glands, okay, in the inner oral surface of the cheek. And that is something, because it's ectopic, okay? You don't expect to find it over there. My friends, is given an eponym, something we call Fordyce granules or Fordyce spots, okay? So you may see that one also, because the point is that forming the core of the cheek will also be skeletal muscle, okay, fibers. And my friend, that is something we call the buccinator muscle, My friends, I bring to you another oral structure which is also important, and my friend, that's the lip. We know about the lip, okay, that it's of course going to have what we call anterior to teres portion, okay, which dwells in the oral cavity. And then of course, for that reason, we call it the oral part. And then we have what we call the posterior one-third portion, which dwells in the oropharynx. So that becomes the pharyngeal part of the tongue. Of course, by way of the separation, by way of what we call the sulcus terminalis. My friends, I don't need to go on about all these things, but my friends, one thing is that I've done videos on these things. Kindly get them and of course watch them. Now, here's the point. If I look at the lip, the dorsal surface, yes, of the anterior to teres portion of the tongue is flared. So we can see, if you flick your tongue out, you see that there will be some kind of white stones over there. Likewise, there will be pinkish or reddish, spots on the tongue. Okay, and those things, they are something I prefer, that we call them primary lingual papillae. And so my friends, you can see some of them over here, because my friend, the tongue, okay, will present with two surfaces, just like the cheek. It will present with two surfaces. Okay, a dorsal surface, which is flared, that is the one we find over here in the anterior to teres portion. Okay, that is dorsal surface, or the superior surface of the tongue. And then the inferior surface, okay, or the ventral surface of the tongue, you can see that the place is smooth. Okay, unlike this area which is rough. Of course, in the posterior one-third portion of the dorsal surface of the tongue, we see this cobblestone-like appearance, okay, by way of aggregation of lymphatic nodules, something you may call the lingual tonsil. Now, I will treat another video on it, because already I've done a video regarding, something on the lymphoid organs. Okay, you can get that video. I explained all these tonsils, okay, to you histologically. Now, please pay attention again here. Now, whether we are talking about, of course, the dorsal surface or the lingual surface of the anterior to teres portion of the tongue, then one thing that we will see is that the epithelial lining, okay, I want you to know that, is going to be stratified, squamous, non-keratinized epithelium. But my friends, there's a catch. In the case of the anterior to teres portion, okay, in addition to the stratified squamous, non-keratinized epithelium, we see some slender-like structures, which I'll show you better in another picture. Slender-like structures, okay, which are keratinized. Okay, they are keratinized projections, which are conical in shape, ensuring, or helping with the mechanical digestion of the food in the oral cavity. Okay, so my friend, that guy, or those guys, they are called something we call filiform lingual papillae. Filiform lingual papillae. Now, you don't just say filiform, because filiform is just the shape. Okay, so you have to qualify it with the lingual, papillae. And I'm going to explain that one to you. You see that the papillae that we mentioned, we're talking about 4 of them. And one thing I'll let you know is that we will rather be called the primary lingual papillae, and not just lingual papillae, primary lingual papillae. For the reason that even deep to them, you will see underconnection papillae over there. And so instead of saying just lingual papillae, prefer to call them primary lingual papillae. Now, let's look at something. Again, deep to the epithelial lining, there's going to be, of course, the lamina propria. And my friends, the point I want you to know over here, just like what we found in the case of that of the inner oral surface of the lip, okay, where we said that the lamina propria was aglandular, was devoid of secretory acini, the same thing applies to that of the tongue, okay, both at the dorsal surface and of course at the ventral surface. We don't have secretory acini over there. But my friends, one important thing, yes, is that you can see a core of skeletal muscle fibers which run in several directions, different directions, many directions all over here. Okay, and so these guys, okay, they are also skeletal muscle fibers. But my friend, the point is that we are going to have submucosa, but this submucosa is blended with, of course, the skeletal muscle fibers. And my friend, that is where we are going to see the secretory acini. So you can see something over here. Some of them are mucous, some of them are serous. all around over here, and of course the skeletal muscle fiber moving in all directions. So my friends, one question which oftentimes we are asked histologically is that what is the single most histological identifying feature of the tongue? And my friends, your answer is the presence of skeletal muscle fibers running in different planes and interspersed within them, okay, glands. And these glands, they could be serous, they could also be mucous. Okay, so that's the useful thing I want you to know over here. That's for the tongue. And my friends, going on with the tongue again, you can be given the slide, for instance, to identify it. And my friend, the main thing I want you to know over here are the conical or the slender-like structures which represent the keratin projections, okay, found on the anterior to teres portion or the dorsum of the tongue. And so if you flick your tongue out, those white spots that you find over here are histologically identified as such. So these are the guys. And one thing that we find is that, okay, in between these, whitish areas, you'll be seeing some red dots over there. And my friend, those guys, they are what we call the fungiform lingual papillae. Fungiform lingual papillae. We'll be seeing that. I'll be showing you that one, in a greater detail. But the point is that if you look at the primary lingual papillae by way of the fungiform, okay, the fungiform you say is mushroom shaped. That's the normal histology. That's how we describe these guys. The point is that we'll be seeing that it should be well endowed with taste buds. We know that the tongue, one of the main functions is for gustation. And so the tastes, okay, buds, they are going to be located in some of these primary lingual papillae. Remember that the filiform lingual papillae are devoid of taste buds, okay, for the reason that they are keratinized. The remaining ones which have taste buds, okay, are non-keratinized, including the fungiform papillae, where we see the taste buds located at the crown, okay, or the superior portion of what we call the papilla that you find over here. Okay, so now let's look at it. There's another papilla I want you to know. And my friend, this time around, this is the circumvallate papilla. Now, these are the largest papillae. Of course, they will also be having the maximum population of what we call the taste buds over there. Okay, now one thing that we know is that for this, circumvallate papillae, unlike the other lingual papillae, primary lingual papillae, which will have, okay, will have, of course, taste buds, and of course, there will be a nerve which will be carrying their taste sensation, mainly via what we call the chorda tympani nerve. This guy, although we see is, located ventral or in front of what we call the sulcus terminalis, my friends, it is not supplied by, of course, the chorda tympani branch of the facial nerve, but rather by what we call the glossopharyngeal nerve. I want you to appreciate these things. And this guy over here, what we see is that you see that the shape, it's also, this kind of rounded guy, which could also, some authors may describe it as being mushroom shaped. But the key point over here that I want you to become aware is that the taste buds, unlike in the case of, fungiform papillae, which are located on the superior portion, this time the taste buds are located on the lateral wall, okay, of this papilla. Okay, so that's what we see. You'll be seeing the taste buds, okay? These whitest guys that I'm showing over here, these represent the taste buds over here. And my friends, one useful thing I want you to also know is that we'll be seeing, I'll be showing you the next guy, I'll be showing you another papilla. That one will also be having the taste buds, okay, located on a lateral wall. So my friend, then how do you distinguish them? Now you see that almost always this guy, okay, from lateral wall in the craniocaudal direction, from superior to inferior, is more or less that lateral walls more or less appear to be convergent inferiorly in craniocaudal direction. That's what we see. Yes, sometimes some students tell me that you can see gustatory pits, okay, you can see moats, or otherwise called moats, otherwise called trenches, okay, otherwise called furrows. These things, they will always be there, okay, whichever, papilla that is present, as far as it is relevant in gustation, because we're well endowed with taste buds, okay, at the basis, especially we are going to have these serous, secretory signer, okay, going to bring their secretions so that they can wash off already tasted chemical so that new one can be tasted. So these ones will always be there. Now in the case of circumvallate papilla, now you can see that these guys are deeply stained, and that is why we'll be calling them, okay, serous acini. Specifically those which are located, okay, at the basis of these gustatory pits, we call them von Ebner's glands. Von Ebner's glands. Okay, I want you to appreciate that one. Now the point here is that if you see it, I said that the epithelial line is going to be stratified squamous, non-keratinized, and one thing we'll be seeing is that we'll be seeing these epithelial pegs and Greenwich papillae will also be invading. I mean, that's what we see. But these ones, they are shallow. Now, the point over here I want you to put down right now is that the epithelial pecs and connective tissue papillae, in the case of circumvallate primary lingual papilla, is that it's going to be shallow. They are going to be shallow. And so now, what's the reason why I said it should rather be called primary lingual papilla? The reason is that now there's a mucosal elevation made up of course, mainly we have the epithelial lining, and of course we have the lamina propria. Okay, that's what we see. But my friends, in addition to that, what we see is that, I mean, one thing I want you to know right now is that you'll be seeing that the epithelium, we have epithelium dipping into it and Greenwich papillae going into it. These are also papillae. And so we have a papilla, and within it, there's another papilla. That is why we call this one a primary lingual papilla, and these ones become secondary lingual papillae. That's one thing I want you to know. And so what was I even saying? In the young, and also in some other primates like the dog, okay, for instance, you'll be seeing that they will also be presenting, okay, with another type of papilla. And at this type of papillae, what we see is that this time around, also their taste bars is also at the lateral walls, no problem. But one thing that we see is that these epithelial pecs, okay, you can see epithelial pecs are deeper. Likewise, the Greenwich papillae will also be very deep. That is what we see over here. So that's the main distinction between, of course, the circumvallate lingual papilla and, of course, the foliate lingual papilla. Okay, so that's what we see. And that, of course, the gastratory pits, whatever, they will be there, no problem. Okay, there will also be some serous, secretory units, which will, of course, bring their secretions to wash off already tasted chemical. Okay, so that no one can be tasted or can be perceived. No doubt that will be seeing the skeletal muscle fibers running in different directions and interspersed within them, these glands. No problem with these things. Okay, so that's one thing I want you to know. Another thing is that unlike in the case of circumvallate papilla, which we saw that in craniocaudal direction, the lateral walls tend to converge. In the case of foliate lingual papillae, we see the lateral walls to be parallel to each other per papilla. Some people also bring in the concept that you see them moving in that kind of series. So you have one here, another one here, another one here, another. Now that was not very useful because the point is that we can just take one section of this one for you to identify it histologically. And that is when you have to be able to appreciate some of these things. Okay, so that is that one. Now let's move on to the next thing. Now the next slide, I see 3 slides over here well labeled. Now the first one I want you to appreciate is, of course, the parotid gland. Now first of all, these are called major salivary glands. And unlike minor salivary glands, okay, so for instance, in the case of, the von Ebner's glands that I mentioned, which are associated with the gastratory pits of the circumvallate papillae, which could, they are mainly cellulose. As I said, some of them could also be mucous. Okay, those ones, they are also minor salivary glands, just like the labial glands. So those ones we call lingual glands, which we secrete saliva continuously. But my friend, these guys we are calling major salivary glands. Okay, they secrete saliva continually. They are just 3 and paired, namely parotid, sublingual, submandibular glands. Okay, that is what we see. But in the case of the minor, they are numerous, more than 700,000 and beyond. Okay, a lot of them. But the point I want you to know over here is that whichever major salivary gland we are talking about, remember that they will be discrete organ. They will be organs on their own. Now, because they will be organs on their own, then they will be encapsulated. So, first of all, histologically, okay, this one doesn't show the full section, but I want you to know that they will be encapsulated. They will have the connective capsule. And whenever you talk about capsule, it is dense, irregular connective tissue. 1. Whenever we have capsules will invade. Okay, we invaginate the substance of that compound organ. The parenchyma will invade it, or they will send what we call septations. Okay, so number 2 is that we'll be seeing septations. Now, what are these septations going to do? They are going to divide the substance of this compound organs. Okay, they are compound organs actually, or parenchymal organs, okay, or solid organs. They are going to divide them into something we call lobes in the larger picture, and then smaller picture lobes. So all of them will be presented with lobes. Historically, we'll be appreciating them. Okay, now the next one, where is the 4th one? Running in these connective tissue septations, okay, will be ducts. So in these ducts, we call them interlobular ducts. Because they will be found themselves in between the lobes. Interlobular ducts, okay, in between the lobes. Now, if you are going to have interlobular ducts, then within the lobes too, there will be ducts. So the next one will be intralobular duct, which of course one thing we know about intralobular duct is that we have what we call intercalated, and of course the striated duct. I've done videos on that. Please kindly get the videos and of course revise these things. And then finally, all of them, okay, once they have glands, they have to secrete. So they'll be having secretory acini, okay, forming their secretory unit. And I want you to appreciate that one. Now, all of them, regardless of these guys, whichever type we are talking about, will have some serous secretory acini. Now, mainly, this is what I want you to know. The proportion of the serous secretory acini, okay, to any other thing is the one which will help you to identify. Mainly histological, that's what we see. And so that's one thing I want you to know. Now, ignore. Sometimes I see people commenting that it is useful. For instance, you see adipocytes. No, adipocytes having this pale, whitish areas with peripheral place nuclei, it's not useful. Because all these guys, they will be having fat around them. So you don't compare the proportion of the adipocytes, no. But rather, the key thing that we are comparing is the nature of the secretory acini. Now, if I look at barring these, pale staining areas, okay, I'm interested in these ones, which are the serous. They are deeply stained. So they have the serous secretory acini. Okay, and these ones, they are those ones we call them, they are going to be, so whenever we talk about parotid gland, we say that they are going to have exclusively serous secretory units. Although there may be some areas where maybe, mucous, but predominantly, or to a large extent, sometimes we say solely or exclusively, we see serous secretory units over here. That's all. Now the other one is what we call the submandibular gland. In the case of the submandibular gland, you see some serous secretory, they are deeply stained, no problem, but you also see some areas which are pale stained. But one thing that we see is that the proportion of the pale stained region is lower compared to that of the, deeply stained serous secretory areas. Okay, and so you help in identification. The coronary septations, the ducts, interlobular ducts, all of them will be there. They don't have any issue with that. And then in the case of the sublingual gland, yes, you can see the serous secretory units, and then also you can see the pale staining areas, which are numerous compared to the serous secretory units. And in addition, yes, also with the case of the submandibular gland, you may see a mixed gland, a mixed secretory unit, where you have both the serous and of course the mucus over there. But because of something we call mucogen swelling, then what will happen is that the mucus acini, okay, will push the serous secretory cells away, so that they form a cap over there, something we call serous demilune. Serous demilune. So you should know that whenever you talk about serous demilunes, you will be finding them associated with the submandibular gland or for the sublingual gland as a cap of serous secretory units on what we call mucus, acini or acinos. That's one thing I want you to know. Now, one more thing I want you to know is that usually the product, if the product that the gland is going to make, okay, is watery. So if you have more serous secretory unit, then your product will be mainly watery. Okay, and remember, one thing I've said in my videos is that the intralobular duct by way of the striated and intercalated duct will be relevant as far as modification of the saliva which is made, okay, is concerned. And so for this reason, one thing I want you to know is that in the case of parotid gland, there will be more intralobular duct than interlobular duct, which is exactly opposite to, of course, submandibular to some extent, and then more in the case of the sublingual gland. I want you to appreciate that. Now, whenever I talk about parotid gland, there's something in histology, we call them lookalikes, okay? So that you may be confused. Sometimes you can give you this, and this one too, you have these kind of rosette-shaped, secretory acini which are deeply stained, okay? That's what we see. So one might think that, yes, then I'm looking at the parotid gland. My friend, no. Because apart from having all these serous secretory acini, we also have what we call these pale staining areas, which are not, now pay attention, these are not, what do you call it, the adipocyte. They are not adipocyte. Adipocyte will be pale over. Now this is pale, but you can see some nuclei of cells in it. Okay, I can see another one over here. Okay, another one over here. Now, my friends, these ones, they are very maximum at the tail of the pancreas. Okay, so this is what we call the islets of Langerhans. So islet of Langerhans should be one of the distinguishing, okay, features, okay, that will help you separate the pancreas from, of course, the parotid gland, so that you can do the differential, diagnosis over here. No doubt that this one will also have features like to be encapsulated. One more thing about the major salivary glands, that all of them, the sort of gland that they will have, just like the exocrine portion of the pancreas, will be compound tubuloalveolar. Okay, that's also very useful. All of them will have compound tubuloalveolar. Okay, that is also very useful. And one more thing I want you to now, there will be capsule, quarter-inch septations, everything will be the same, just like we discussed for the parotid gland. The only thing is that this one we don't need a lot of modification, and so rather we'll be having more interlobular ducts than intralobular ducts, opposite to what we find in the case of the parotid gland. Now, one more thing. The capsule, the fibers, everything, when they go in, even around these islets, they encircle it. So more or less like the islet is like an organ within this pancreas, the exocrine portion of the pancreas, because we'll be having some kind of thin quarter-inch capsule around it. I want you to know that. And it will be dwelling in a highly vascular bed. After all, that is the endocrine portion of the pancreas. And one thing that we know about this is that we have some cells, especially towards the central point. Okay, we're talking about what we call the alpha, or of course the delta, we're talking about the beta cells, especially in the central region, and at the periphery we're talking mainly about the alpha and delta cells. Okay, I've done these videos already. Please kindly get videos on them and of course watch it. Okay, so that is the pancreas. I want you to appreciate that. Now this is just a rapid one. Now this is the esophagus. Esophagus, historically, we know we have the upper 1/3 portion, middle 1/3, and lower 1/3 portion. The essential is that the skeletal muscle. Now remember, this is an organ of the postpharyngeal gland. Last 2 weeks, I did a video, okay, introducing you something small about tubular organs or hollow organs, something called luminal organs. And I think I mentioned something about these organs of the postpharyngeal gland that generally do be having 4 tunics. That's the key thing I want you to become aware of. 4 tunics. And this time around, normally we want to see the glands in the lamina propria, not in the submucosa, which was in the case of most of the oral structures that we discussed. Okay, so that is what we see. The esophagus will be having, of course, stratified squamous, non-keratinized epithelial, just like the anal canal. That's all. So whenever you have a section like this, they tell us that it has all these 4 tunics. Okay, barrier of mucosa, submucosa, okay, muscularis propria. And of course, we talk about adventitia or serosa. Now, this mainly is going to be adventitia. I'll tell you why. Now, if you look at it, the lamina propria doesn't have any gland over there. It is lacking secretory acini, which tells me that that's more or less like the upper portion of the esophagus. Okay, and one other thing too that we see is that after telling us about the tunics, don't forget to tell us about the presence of muscularis mucosae. Extremely important, because for us to know that it's an organ of the postpharyngeal gut, the presence of the muscularis mucosae. Now this guy over here, there's an H&E stain section, so you may not see it so well. Remember, muscularis mucosae, as I mentioned, will be exclusively made up of smooth muscle fibers, and we are having 2 layers, inner circular longitudinal muscle layers. However, with the exception of the stomach, which will be seeing these 2 sections distinctly under light microscopy, any other thing, normally we see just a single layer, and that is the outer longitudinal muscle layer. Now this time you can see that the muscle fibers are broken up into pieces. Okay, now if they are broken up into pieces, then it tells me that the plane of section was against the orientation of the muscle fibers over here. So if it's longitudinal, it's broken up into pieces, then it means the plane of section was transverse. Okay, I want you to just appreciate that one. Okay, so that's what we see. Rather, due to the, muscularis mucosae, that's the one we talk about, muscularis mucosae, we have the submucosa where we see secretory acini. Okay, mucus, and some of them are serous. Okay, over here. Okay, at some intervals. Now, normally, we want to see it in the upper portion of the esophagus, but some other authors have reported seeing these glands in the submucosa in several areas along the entire length of what we call the esophagus. Okay, so that is one thing we see. Now, as I said, I said we don't expect to see glands in the submucosa. We want to see it in the lamina propria. So whenever we see glands in the submucosa, then we got to qualify the name. And that is why this one will be talking about it as submucosal glands, with the real name being submucosal glands proper. So whenever you hear of submucosal glands proper, then we are not talking about glands in, of course, the lamina propria, but we are talking about glands in the submucosa, in the case of the esophagus, and also in the duodenum. We'll come into that one also. Okay, so that's that one. And then from there, you go to what we call the muscularis externa. And whenever we talk about muscularis externa, we are going to have the inner circular and of course outer longitudinal. This one doesn't show the full extent. We have an inner circular and of course outer longitudinal muscularis. I've done these videos. Remember, I've said these things so that you can go and get these videos and watch. Now the point is that the esophagus is always collapsed if no food is running through it. Yes, I've said these things times without number. It's always collapsed, just like the vagina. If no food is running through it, they'll get collapsed. They will become distended, okay, and expand whenever food is running through it, okay. And that is why you'll be seeing these folds, okay, over here. So the esophagus will be having all these mucosal folds over here, okay, mainly formed by, of course, the epithelial lining, of course, lamina propria, together with, of course, the submucosa. So oftentimes we don't talk about the folds, okay, of the esophagus. We've not given it a special name. It doesn't mean it does not exist. Okay, I want you to appreciate that. Now, please pay attention. Anal canal closely resembles that of the esophagus for the reason that the epithelial lining will also be stratified squamous, non-keratinized, number one. The only distinction which I want you to become aware, of course, mainly to be having this kind of skeletal muscle fiber, depending on where we section it, okay, that distinction will be there. But the useful distinction is that beyond the anorectal junction, we don't have muscularis mucosae. And that is why one distinction is that in the case of the anal canal, it will be devoid of muscularis mucosae. We won't see it. But in the case of the esophagus, once you can see it so well over there, then histologically I want you to comment, just like the stomach also, that we are seeing a prominent muscularis mucosae. Very important. After talking about the four coats, muscularis mucosae should be mentioned. Okay, tell us, do you see glands in the lamina propria in the submucosa? Let us see. Are the glands given some kind of special name? Let us see. Okay, these are useful. Tell us about the muscle disposition of all these things. So rapidly, there's another thing about it. If I move out from the stomach, the esophagus, I go to the stomach. And in the case of the stomach, what we see is that the epithelial lining is going to be a simple columnar epithelium without a goblet cells. Now, one time I was confronted that people can see pale stain area, okay, apical to the columnar shaped nuclei, okay, or the oval shaped nuclei of the simple columnar epithelium of the stomach. And always my answer is that the simple columnar epithelial lining of the stomach homogeneously secretes mucin, which combines with water to form mucus. And so there will be that kind of mucinogen material, or that mucinous material, okay, apical to the nuclei. And so during tissue processing, they will be washed off, and that's why the area will become pale. And they should not be confused with goblet cells. Please appreciate that. And so that is the epithelial lining. And then the stomach will have this kind of gastric gland, okay, whether it's in the fundus gland, cardiac glands, if it's in the pylorus, parotid glands, okay, yes, they'll be having all those glands over there. And then, but those glands are in the lamina propria. I want you to appreciate that. And then, of course, again, that is your muscularis mucosae, exclusive made up of smooth muscle fibers. Now, this one we've not magnified it enough, but there are actually two layers that we find over here. But if you really magnify it, you see the fibers moving, okay, separated. And then, of course, the lamina propria, okay, together with the epithelial lining, okay, moving upwards. And then the core of this fold, okay, is mainly by the submucosa over here. Remember that the submucosa will be devoid of glands. Okay, so this fold is something we call gastric rugae. Now, the reason why I'm interested in qualifying it with gastric is that, yes, even in the vagina, we have vaginal rugae. Okay, the ridges, okay, which are located in the hard palate, they are called palatal rugae. You may even have some rugae in the gallbladder, okay, all those folds over there. But remember that these folds, they are temporary folds, okay, that we find over there. All these longitudinal folds that we find here. Okay, so that's what that one. And remember that the stomach, apart from having a general plan, 4 tunics, muscularis mucosae being prominent, talking about the gastric glands, talking about absence of glands in, of course, the submucosa, then you don't need to forget about telling us about the three layers of the musculature, okay, the muscularis propria, having an inner oblique, middle circular, and outer longitudinal muscle disposition over there. And then don't forget that this time around, in the case of the esophagus, you may have varying areas, such that especially it's only the terminal portion, which of course will be having what you call, will be having serosa. The remaining portion will be having adventitia. And remember that I told you that esophagus will not be having glands in the lamina propria. It's the terminal portion, okay, which will be having glands, the lamina propria. And that is something you call esophageal glands, okay, esophageal cardiac glands. I want you to appreciate that. Okay, so that is that one. This one will be having serosa. It's mobile. Yes, there's one portion of the stomach we call pylori. So all these pale stained areas, they represent that empty areas due to, of course, the mucinogen, granules, which were washed off. Okay, mucinous material which was washed off. Okay, so this gland, okay, what we see is that we have longer pits, okay, or you can say deeper pits. The pits, they go so deep, okay, occupying at least about 2/3 portion of the thickness of the gland. And then the secretory portion, which is the gland proper, making the product, will just be about just 1/3 portion of it. Okay, so whenever you are seeing this, that the pits, okay, whenever you talk about pits, gastric pits, we are talking about the duct of the gastric gland. Okay, they will be longer compared to that of the. Now, this is actually what we call the pylorus. In the case of the pylorus, mainly in the glands over there, yeah, there will be that kind of mucous secretion cells, okay, over there. And then you may also be seeing some kind of, isolated chief cells over there. Rarely I want to see parietal cells. Okay, that is one thing I want you to become aware of. Okay, so that's what we see. The same organization, just like any other thing. And then this is the funded part or the body part. Now, because the reason is that histologically, these guys are indistinguishable. Okay, because the point is that they'll be having, okay, just occupying just about 1/4 of the thickness of the gland will be the pits. And then the gland, which is going to make the product, the secretory portion, will be very enormous, will be very long, so to speak. And one useful thing that we see is that if you enlarge it, you'll be seeing on the H and E, you'll be seeing that most of the cells over here will be having eosinophilic cytoplasm. Eosinophilic cytoplasm. That is what we'll be seeing. And then we'll be having basophilic nuclei, no problem. And then there will be few of the cells having, basophilic cytoplasm. Now, those ones which I'm saying they are numerous, going to have, eosinophilic cytoplasm. They are the xanthic cells or the parietal cells, okay, of the stomach. And of course, the basophilic ones will be, of course, the chief cells, okay, or the peptic cell, or the zymogen cells, okay. That is one thing that we see. The same thing, applies to these. So that's how you are supposed to say. You talk about the four codes, muscularis mucosae. Once it's an organ of the postpharyngeal gut, okay. Talk about the glands, okay, that we find in the lamina propria, gastric. Which glands, which of them are so numerous? Let us know. Okay, in the case of this one, a lot of the eosinophilic cells, which you call them the parietal cells or the xanthic cells, which appear like fried egg, okay. That having this kind of fried egg appearance. Please appreciate these things. Now, rapidly, the next guy we talk about is, of course, the intestine. Now, whenever we talk about the intestines, we are talking about the large intestine and, of course, the small intestine. Unlike the large intestine, which will have smooth luminal margin, because the point is that the epithelial line will be the same. Simple columnar epithelium with a lot of what we call goblet cells, okay, well endowed goblet cells. And they will also have apical modification, which I've explained already, striated, but it will be present. Okay, that's what we see. But the point is that in the case of what we call the small intestine, we'll be seeing what we call these folds formed by what we call the epithelial lining, and of course the lamina propria over here. Okay, so that one will be coming what we call the villi. We don't have villi in the case of what we call the large intestine. Okay, please appreciate this one for me. In the case of the large intestine, that's what you mentioned. And then also, both the small and large intestine, there will be invagination of the epithelial line and forming what we call glands in the lamina propria. And those glands, okay, we call those glands crypts of Lieberkühn. Give it a special name, crypts of Lieberkühn. I want you to appreciate that. Now, everything will apply. villi will be present, striated border will be present, epithelial line will be the same for whichever part of the small intestine. But what we see is that in the case of the duodenum, what we see that the submucosa will also have some kind of, secretory portions, some kind of gland. Okay, you can see this mucous secretion, cells over here. And this is something we call this is what we call the submucosal glands. So the name will be called what? Submucosal glands proper, where is given a special eponym. Okay, some we call Brannus glands. Okay, that's what we see. And then one more thing I want you to know is that also related to what we call the distal portion of the duodenum up to, okay, which will of course become very maximum, okay, very prominent in the case of the jejunum, and of course will end at the proximal portion of the ileum. We see this fold, which is formed by, of course, the epithelial lining and lamina propria, that's the mucosa, with a core formed by the submucosa. This is what we call the, plaque secularis. And that plaque secularis will be relevant as far as absorption is concerned. Very prominent in the case of the jejunum. Now, in the case of ileum, what do we see? In the case of the ileum, what we'll be seeing is that the villi, whatever will be present, no problem. But what the key point is that at one point, which we call the antemesenteric border, in the lamina propria, which of course, as they grow, they will break through the muscularis mucosae. For this time, for instance, they've broken into it, they are in the submucosa. These are what we call the Peyer's patches, aggregation of lymphatic nodules at one side over here. So that's the distinction that we find over here. In the case, okay, whenever I mention Peyer's patch, where is lymphatic nodule, then I have to quickly bring in the appendix. But the appendix also have some numerous lymphatic nodules, which will have similar arrangement, just like in the case of the ileum. But the only thing is that it's not just confined to one side; they go all around it. And of course, we don't see the villi too over here. So this one will be having smooth luminal margin over here. Now, in the case of jejunum, neither are we going to have the Peyer's patches, aggregate of lymphatic nodule, neither are we also going to have what we call the submucosal glands. They will be having the mucosal glands by way of the crypt of Libacune, okay, villi, okay, striated border, some column epithelium with having 4 coats, okay. You mentioned all those things, muscularis mucosae being present and all that. All those things will be mentioned. You don't have any problem. Okay, but it will not have submucosal glands, neither will it have, the Peyer's patches. Now, in the case of the large intestine, mainly I'm talking about the colon and the cecum. Remember that histologically, the colon and the cecum are not distinguishable. So whenever we talk about colon, it includes the cecum. Now, what do we see? The epithelial lining, smooth luminal surface. Okay, we don't have the villi, but rather we have some columnar epithelium with goblet cells. We've had numerous goblet cells. Then, of course, we have the 4 units, no problem. Mucosa, submucosa, okay, muscularis, external, of course, serosa or adventitia, depending on which portion of the large intestine we are talking about. But my friends, the most important point I want you to know is that at some point, 3 areas, we have thickened, equally spaced bands of the muscularis external, which portion, the outer longitudinal musculature, this guy, okay, forming something we call tinea coli, which you don't see it in the case of what we call the small intestine. That's also very useful that you appreciate. My friends, finally, so that next time we continue with it, is that we look at that of the rectum. Yes, it will have features of the large intestine, no problem. The only thing is that it won't have, okay, what we call tinea coli. It won't have tinea coli. There will be folds, no problem. The folds, transverse rectal folds, they will be there, no problem. Making the lumen, okay, a bit smaller. That's what we see. Okay, so please, I want you to appreciate this one. It will be having the inner circular musculature and then, of course, the outer longitudinal musculature. So what it's going to have, what I want to describe over here, 4 tunics, mucosa, okay, submucosa, forming the core over here. But remember that the mucosa will be having glands, and they are the crypt of Libacune. But in the case of what we call submucosa, there will not be any gland over there. It will be a glandular. Then we go to the muscularis externa, inner circular, outer longitudinal musculature. And then, of course, we go to that of the adventitia, okay, having connective tissue over there. Okay, that is what we see. Of course, you don't need to forget about talking about the muscularis mucosae. Although it will be turning out, you have to acknowledge that it is there. Don't forget that whichever portion of the postpharyngeal gut, or whichever you may be seeing all these lymphatic nodules, okay, solitary lymphatic nodules, okay, isolated ones around over there. They may also be having diffuse, lymphocytes, okay, especially in the lamina propria, also in the submucosa, okay, all these areas will be seen. So my friends, I believe that this rapid revision, okay, will go a long way to help you, okay, in quickly revising for whichever exam that you have. Yes, in the next meeting, I'll take you through the part 2 of this meeting. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.